cool. This is my first talk, so ever. So yeah, keep that in mind. Thank you. So my name is Bogdan Stancu, and the talk that we're gonna have today is more about the mindset, which I'm trying to change. It's called You Can't YAML Your Way Out of This. And I'm going to be presenting the journey that we took to provide Adobe with a pipeline for telemetry. We're going to talk about how it started and how we kind of were wrong at the beginning. Then what I consider to be the 3 levels of understanding of a project. And then a problem that we found that just we had, I think, and how we solved it. So at first, I would like to ask you, how many of you have stuff deployed in production that's open source? Can you please raise your hand if you have stuff deployed in production that is open source? All right, some people. Keep your hand up if you fully understand that product. Nobody has their hand up yet still. Yeah, these are some fake testimonials that I came up with. And it's, I think it's normal that this happens. But let's talk a bit about why. And I found these, I think, 3 main principles, I guess. The first one is called the bandwagon effect. And it's when you look around and see people doing something, you tend to trust that. So a bunch of people are doing, I don't know, Prometheus for monitoring. Like, yeah, well, we're going to do Prometheus, obviously. Social conformity is kind of tied to that, but in the sense that you would actually feel bad if you're not using that. When you talk to people and they're like, yeah, everybody's using Prometheus, why aren't you? And you don't know what to say. And abstraction comfort is the comfort that you have into something that you don't really understand, but it works. It's like, yeah, it's awesome, it works. I don't have to understand that. And it gives you comfort in a way, because you don't have to understand it. Okay, now, this talk is based on our experience with OpenTelemetry, and if there are people here that don't know what OpenTelemetry is, it started a while ago with a merger between 2 projects. One is called Open Census, which was started by some guys at Google, and Open Tracing, which were started by many companies, including Google. And they were kind of competing, and then in 2018, I think, at the KubeCon, they said that, hey, we're now friends. So OpenTelemetry became a thing. They merged. And it's many things. But the important part is that it has this collector, which is an agent that can collect data, metrics, traces, logs, telemetry data, process it, and then send it to wherever. People usually have an application that is instrumented, which means that there is code inside that emits telemetry. It's either manual or automatic, but yeah. And then OpenTelemetry collectors usually have 3 main components or kinds of components. Receivers, which just kind of define what the collector is ingesting, processors to process it, and exporters, which tell the collector where to send the data. And that can be another collector. And here, this is how I thought to draw a queue, which like it can fill and overflow, and the backend. And those are some small code snippets. It's all YAML. And yeah, you have in the config like receivers, and then you have a list of your receivers. In that example, Prometheus receiver, which is its own custom thing with its own custom maintainers. It's a plugin kind of thing maintained by other people than the OpenTelemetry guys. Same as for the other components. All right, and how it all started is that we have what I think, again, these are all my opinions. The level 1 is kind of a POC stage, where you're just copy pasting something that you found on the internet. You're looking at quick start guides and stuff like that, which usually work. Well, most of the time work. And in a sense, that's the problem. And that's what I don't like about, well, not I don't like, but I think that enables bad practices. Because we consider a good product something that you can start very easily and it just works. And in a sense, that makes it so that you don't need to understand it. And people want adoption. Like a good project is a project that has a lot of adoption, which means that getting started has to be really fast. But after that, yeah. And that, as I said, enables people to not need to understand what they run in production. And stuff can break, obviously. And our POC started with just like 2 or 3 teams that wanted to use OpenTelemetry to gather their data. And this, besides the backend, what it's here on the kind of left application and the collector is in their namespace. So they take care of it. They instrumented their application, and we taught them how to put a collector there, and it all worked perfectly for some small applications from some small teams that just wanted to try it out. So because it worked so well, other teams wanted to use it. So we had to build something that could scale. And we created this architecture where the same thing stays in the that user team namespace, which is the application and one collector, because it has to be in the same namespace to gather that data. And then everything after this is what we keep up, kind of. And we decided to split. Well, this is happening on all clusters. We have a specific namespace for this, where we ingest from all applications in that cluster. And we decided to split it. We have 3 sets of collectors for metric, traces, logs, because if we wanted to not have the problem of the noisy neighbor, which is when other teams break the backend and everybody is affected. This kind of solved that a bit. And it sounds good. Like, it should work. But what happens if the traces backend is down? The queue fills up, so our collector is down. And then the collector sending to our collector's queue fills up. So this collector is down. And if this collector is down and it's in agent mode, which means it's in the same pod, I'm talking about Kubernetes right now, yeah. If it's in the same pod, then the whole pod is down. So we just broke user application because our backend is down. Because we just used the config that we found on the internet. Then some other things can happen, like out of memory, because we didn't give the collectors enough memory, they just fail. And again, that failure can cause this collector to fail, which will cause the application to fail. And just wrongly configured processors. Again, the failure can go down. So we started looking at the config, because copying it from the internet didn't work. And we understood it to a point where we knew each configuration what it does. But we're still in the YAML bubble. Like, we're there. We fixed some things, but some problems are still there. And we start to find out that when people build products, they come with assumptions baked in. They would build it like they would use it. And when you don't use it like they think you would, that config will break. Even though you configured it well, you didn't use it as they thought. So stuff improved. We had a big enough queue so if the traces backend is down, our collectors would not go down. There's a thing called memory limiting, which would just drop metrics if the collector is close to tipping over. And yeah, now it looked like this. But we still had other kinds of outages, mainly based on the fact that we didn't understand those assumptions that I mentioned, and we didn't understand what was happening. Like, things were not working as we expected, but we didn't know why. So it's open source, so we went in and understood the code, at least where it is, because nobody has to be on the maintainer level to kind of keep something up. But in case something really breaks, you should be able to find that code and read it and try to debug it. And for the collector, for example, there are two repos. The core repository, which takes care of kind of starting the collector up and then plugging anything that's in the contrib repo into the main framework. And the contrib repo is where people go in and build stuff for their, like, vendors, for example. There's a Splunk receiver, a Splunk exporter, stuff like that. That's one example. But like, vendors go into the contrib and add their things. So now you have this collector that can do almost anything that the market, I guess, would want. Which put us in a good place. We have a right configuration, we understand the code, so we know what assumptions have been made, so we can tweak the configuration to match those assumptions. And if anything ever breaks, we know where to look in the code to understand how it broke, like the errors, where they come from. And that's where people usually, I think, should stop. If everything goes smoothly, that's where everybody should, like, if you have something in production, you should be at this level. You should at least know the config really well and know a bit of the repo. But now I'm talking about open source stuff. But we found a different issue. One that I talked to other people and they didn't have it. Because we run this chained collector setup, the application would emit some metrics. They would go to the second collector, which this is in the user namespace, is the setup that I talked about, which would send to our collector. And that transaction happens kind of at the same time. The first collector sends it, and the second collector says, yeah, okay, good, I got it, 200, that's fine, awesome. And then this second collector would send to the backend. But the backend says, this is wrong authentication. And that's where it ends, because this transaction has been done, so we don't have any way to tell the first collector that the user that the authentication that they sent is bad. We didn't have any way. So what we did, we switched. We did this. There is another kind of component in OpenTelemetry called an extension, which is pretty easy to, like, they have an interface, auth extension interface. Is just one function called authenticate. You fill it up. I made it so that it sends a kind of a mock metric to our backend. And that made it so we are not, we can show users that they are having a wrong authentication. And then if this is good, then it goes all the way. So we moved authentication we moved it closer to the user. And yeah, if I have to say one thing that I would like you all to stay with is that everyone starts with the copy-paste stuff. Everyone goes to the getting started guide, and that's really fine. But you have to understand that there's a lot of code behind what you're deploying, and you have to understand it because stuff breaks. And when it breaks, you really have to, well, you like to know what's happening and what's breaking and how to fix it. So don't stop at just copy-paste engineering. This was me. Thank you.